Yes, Mr. O'Neill.
I want a routine check on a Samuel Masterson, non-resident, registered Gable Hotel. Miss St. John, close the door. I want a routine check of all garages. One of them has his car. Stay here, please. I want to check up on all local banks. Get that private detective McCarthy and tell him to come right over.
Thought I might improve my mind while I waited.
Boswell's Life of John? Surely you didn't expect to wait that long.
I was just going to look at the pictures.
If you love listening to this show, please consider giving a rating and a review on Amazon Alexa or wherever you listen. We want to continue bringing you this amazing content, and part of our ability to do that means that we need a big audience. Now, it may not seem like much, but rating and reviewing the show will help more people find us, just like how you found this show. Simply on any podcast platform, search for our show, scroll down to the bottom, and push 5 stars. It's that easy. Thanks for supporting the show. Today, I'm joined by retired General Roger Teague, who is the CEO of PredaSAR Corporation. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me.
So General Teague, prior to your current role at PredaSAR, you were the director at the Space Programs Office of the Assistant Secretary for Acquisition. I'm curious, what was your role in terms of directing development as well as the purchasing on space programs to Air Force, major commands, product centers, and laboratories, for example, when it came to acquisition programs?
Well, that was a very distinguished role I was very honored to serve in, and that I was able to serve directly for the Secretary of the Air Force on the Secretary's staff to look across not only Air Force programs and portfolios within the space domain, but across as well all other service components, if you will, across the broader national security space enterprise to include the intelligence community. So it was very informative, obviously, and allowed me to be able to represent Air Force space programs to Congress, the White House, OMB, and whatnot, and really maximize the opportunity to make a difference across the broader enterprise. So it was a great position. I was fortunate to be able to serve there for 3 years. Which was a lengthy time, but nonetheless very rewarding as we grew our space enterprise.
And it's really exciting because I think it was really your time that actually helped to grow a lot of the space programs, as well as, of course, I think Air Force generally has always been fairly innovative. But a lot of things that we on the mainstream side see recently, for example, the Mars lander, for instance, a lot of the work that you've been doing really have been very much at the forefront. So can you share maybe a project or two that is, that you can actually share in the public domain in terms of some of the things that you've led?
Sure. I'm very proud to have led personally had a chance to be able to lead several major defense acquisition programs in the space domain, most notably significant involvement with both the Milstar program, which is still on orbit and doing great today, as well as the advanced extremely high frequency or advanced EHF program, along with the space-based infrared systems program and the defense support program. Those obviously in military satellite communications and protected satellite communications is very critical in any time, wartime or peacetime, that we have the capabilities for the president and the unified command structure and the combatant commanders to be able to execute their missions anytime, anywhere. And then likewise, it's critical that our nation be protected with eyes on orbit that are constantly being aware and looking for missile threats that our nation and our allies might face, which was covered by both the SBIRS as well as the DSP program. So several significant programs in that regard. And then likewise, in the Director of Space Programs role, I had an opportunity to work across the entire portfolio, launch enterprise, weather programs, missile warning, GPS, all of it came together there, and it really was a great opportunity to be able to serve there in the air staff.
What a diverse portfolio across so many different categories. And coming back to your comment about the fact that these are really the eyes to some of the most critical aspects in terms of protecting our nation. And can you just kind of reinforce that point in the sense of how important it is? Because I think for the listeners, they may think of defense in the context of perhaps maybe more traditional terrestrial in the sense of airplanes, ships, and tanks and military, but really what's happening on the orbit side is really super critical. And if you could just point to a few specific examples as to why that is the case.
Scott, you're exactly right. The United States journey into space started out with the determination to understand exactly what the Soviet threat was. In the midst of the Cold War, the Soviets were developing advanced missile technologies, ICBMs, capable of inflicting great harm on our nation. And it started the space race and the launch of programs like Redstone and the Jupiter launch programs with the intent of being able to get assets on orbit, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assets to be able to understand what the Soviet threat was at that time. That really was the birth of many important programs like the DSP program, like the Defense Meteorological Satellite Program, GPS, and the like. A lot of early space programs came out of those early years in the 60s that propelled us to where we are today and have provided those capabilities, that blanket of security that our nation and our allies have benefited from for many decades. And it's programs like the Space-Based Infrared Systems Program that are constantly watching 24/7 under all conditions at all times, being constantly mindful of any kind of missile threat that our nation might be facing.
I think that was a beautiful, just kind of a recap of history and the importance of this. And I think kind of bring it back to more current times is, we have, huge threat that's continuing to just grow, which is China. And, they've been excluded from the International Space Station program. And as a result, they've really developed their own set of full stack. And in some ways, some would argue that they've actually started to advance, whether it's in the lunar context or even Mars, for instance. And that's a huge threat, both on the space side, but also in terms of keeping tabs on what they're doing in the South Pacific as well as the Arctic. Any thoughts or comments there?
Well, the space, I think we've seen very clearly, going back to China's interdiction and, if you will, shooting down one of its own weather satellites in 2007, that China poses a real and significant threat to all spacefaring nations. And so I think it's important that first and foremost, the American public understand and appreciate what's going on and the very real challenges that the United States Space Force and General J. Raymond face. That was the foundational reason why the United States Space Force was formed. For many reasons, but principally due to the rising threat environment that we see from actors who behave irresponsibly in this critical domain. And so that's why it's critical also that we are able to not only defend ourselves, but have the ability to, if necessary, and are provoked, that we have the capability to be able to strike back at a time and place of our choosing, but also with capabilities that would otherwise, it would cause another, actor to, think twice before that they ever would want to do that again. And so it's just where we are, and as we've seen the world evolve and these threats evolve. But I'm very confident in the men and women and the guardians of the United States Space Force and all that they're doing for our nation. to be able to meet this threat head on.
And General, I just want to comment that I really appreciate you properly framing this up in terms of the importance, and this has a huge implication to even the work that you're doing at PredaSAR. So I think we'll get into that in just a few minutes. Changing topic just real briefly here is you are highly decorated. You've been the recipient of many awards, such as the Distinguished Service Medal, Defense Superior Service Medal, as well as Legion of Merit with 2 Oak Leaf clusters, as well as many others, including the Air and Space Campaign medals and so forth. When you look back at some of these, incredible accolades and awards and recognition, what are you most proud of and why?
You may also like our quarterly Astor Perkins event that brings some of the most notable experts and category-leading startups in their area of sustainability and human survival on Earth and in space. To register, visit astorperkins.com/events.
Thank you for that question, Scott. For me, it's all about the people that I was fortunate to be able to serve with. I've served on so many great teams, so many great organizations, and I've had so many great bosses, coworkers, friends that to this day I'm still very, very close with. We are all committed to the same objective, right? And that's the passionate interest in our space enterprise and propelling the United States forward with our capabilities across all mission areas to make sure that we remain the best space faring nation on the planet, that what we do matters a lot, and that our people take a great deal of pride in all that they do. And so I was very fortunate to have some great bosses, but it really is a reflection of those that I served with.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Now, I think what we've seen is when, generals, lieutenant generals, and others retire, it's not uncommon for them to get involved with, the private sector in the sense of maybe joining board of directors or even advisory capacity. It's rare to see someone of your rank to actually lead a private commercialization. I'm curious as to, what was the kind of backdrop around how you got recruited to lead PredaSAR back in 2020, and what made you actually decide to join and lead the organization?
Well, when I retired, again, after 31 years of service in the Air Force, as I mentioned before, I think I'm still very passionate about space. The mission area, the great people who serve across the space enterprise. And so for me, it was only natural to want to seek to continue to serve in that regard, albeit in a different role. I wanted to be able to continue to contribute. And so I would tell you that, first I had an opportunity to serve with the Boeing company, which I'm very grateful. I served as their vice president of space intelligence and missile defense. They're in Arlington, Virginia, and a great team fielding great capabilities. And again, doing great things for our nation. And Boeing was a wonderful experience for me to get me, involved in industry. Having been in government service for so long, there are differences and important differences. And I recognize that. Having served in acquisition for so long, I certainly had an opportunity to interact and deal with industry folks for many, many years directly and every day. But nonetheless, there are differences on each side as we look at together to come and field capabilities for our nation. And I recognize that up front. And so it was important that I get my feet wet, so to speak, a little bit with Boeing. Certainly not mindful that, or wasn't aware that there might be any opportunities beyond Boeing available at the time. But I was very grateful to be able to participate and serve on the Boeing team. That said, I got a call, about the time that I was making my transition from Boeing, an opportunity appeared to be able to join PredaSAR and the team. And I joined PredaSAR because I believe in the mission. I believe 100% in the capability that we're fielding and the opportunities that are there. And I'm just excited to be able to continue to build this this organization from the ground up and field this great capability here very quickly.
Very exciting, and I think it's one thing to inherit a very large organization, but I feel like the life cycle where PredaSAR is today, you have a tremendous amount of influence in terms of where it can go and the trajectory. And of course, I know the VC behind who backed you guys as well. We've had them at one of our events, for instance, Randall. Now, let's talk just at a high level about PredaSAR's, low Earth orbit satellites and its synthetic aperture radar technology. What exactly does that mean? What is SAR technology, and how does it actually outperform in some cases relative to other forms of, let's say, sensing types of technologies when it comes to satellites?
You bet. Well, PredaSAR, as is embedded in our name, Predator of Synthetic Aperture Radar, really is a platform that we believe is going to be revolutionary. First and foremost, we believe that there's a huge untapped commercial market for complementary, augmented capabilities, supporting both the Department of Defense and the intelligence community. The DoD and IC have been after these kind of capabilities for a couple of decades now. If you go back to, good grief, the first Gulf War, when Iraqi missile units would shoot Scuds at various targets in and around that theater of operations, and it really created a lot of havoc. And it was recognized at that time that we really needed to try to engage those forces before they were able to launch their missiles. But at the time, the Iraqis were very good at what we called a shoot and scoot kind of CONOP concept of operations, where they were able to launch their missiles quickly and then get their missile batteries out of the way and move along before we could have forces engage them. And so it made it very frustrating for our forces because they were good at it and they were wreaking quite a bit of damage. And so we've seen a couple of different programs since that time, namely the Discover 2 program, which is a SAR-based constellation, as well as the space radar program, that made their way through various iterations, ultimately before both programs are being canceled. But it demonstrated very clearly that the Department of Defense and the intelligence community had a real requirement and a real need. A need for day-night, all-weather, 24/7, 365-day kinds of products. The ability to see at night, to see through storms, to see through dust, clouds, other things that would necessarily obscure technologies like electro-optical sensors or other similar kinds of sensors. And that's the advantage that SAR brings. And we believe that the PredaSAR solution is going to be able to augment, again, those national capabilities that we have, but most importantly, provide resilience, which is a huge part of the space enterprise vision that General Jay Raymond has as part of, as the United States Space Force goes forward. But as well, we also believe that there is a significant commercial and international market demand. So we believe that we've got a real sweet spot here and are excited to be able to get this constellation fielded.
Yeah, I think you share a number of really incredible benefits. And just to kind of juxtapose it properly is that when you talk about things like hyperspectra, for instance, generally it's really more feasible within daytime because you need the light, right? Now, thermal infrareds could actually work in the evening, but again, that's really more on the temperature side. Here, it's one of the things that's, I think, unique that I'm not sure if you quite touched upon it is this notion of accuracy. So most satellite startups are working anywhere between 8 to 10 meters in terms of accuracy, and others are working towards 3 meters. Can you talk about PredaSAR's capability to get down to sub-meter, and what does that mean, and the applicability in terms of some of the DoD and commercial aspects?
Don't forget to visit astroperkins.com to register for our next quarterly events. Past and current speakers include Julianne Hough, actress, dancer, and winner of Dancing with the Stars; Damian Vaughn, former NFL player; Neil Gregory, Chief Thought Leadership Officer at the IFC World Bank, and many more. To register, visit astroperkins.com and click on Events.
Yeah, it's a great question, Scott, and it goes to the value proposition as well as the mission application of exactly the kind of capability we are bringing, because it it becomes relevant to whether or not it's a commander who's deployed or whether it's a business intelligence professional who's looking for information. But when I can get into sub-meter kind of resolution and accuracy, pinpoint accuracy like we can, it allows all kinds of, if you will, unlocking all kinds of access to intelligence that's critically important to do this kinds of things that I talked about previously, ultimately, which is all about making decisions and being able to feed accurate, intelligible, and actionable information to decision makers for rapid decision making to avoid or avert whatever crisis might be unfolding at the time.
Now, in terms of that intelligence, how is that done? Is it, again, some satellite companies provide raw imagery, others are providing the full analytic stack, and in some cases, even the ability to customize and add additional layers of filters. How do you actually provide this intelligence to the consuming enterprise or DoD?
That's another great question, Scott. It's going to vary by customer. Some customers, particularly, like the U.S. defense and intelligence community, many of them only want raw data. They do their own processing. We just have to make sure that we have the proper interfaces to be able to deliver that data to them. And I think another critical, important part of that is being a trusted provider. Ultimately, there has to be a certification process of sorts that ultimately allows the government to know that the data and the information that they are receiving from commercial platforms is trusted. If there's any sense at all that data cannot be trusted and or is compromised in any way, they will not accept it. And we know that. Again, I've got 31 years of experience doing that, so know firsthand, how critically important that is. And PredaSAR is all over that in terms of being able to provide that. But then, beyond that is looking at beyond with regard to additional customers. There will be varying levels of processing required, data processing required to meet various customers' demands. Some customers will only require a little bit of processing, a little bit. Is all that's going to be needed for them to make decisions. Other customers may require much more advanced levels of processing, exquisite products. And so we are looking forward to that challenge as we lay out not only our approach on the PredaSAR side, as well as partnering opportunities to be able to make sure that we can deliver those kinds of products as customers require.
I want to come back to earlier conversation around what you're working on. It is of national importance. And part of that national importance also means, to your point about the data and the encryption aspects, because again, the potential information or the intelligence for decision support that you're providing is so potentially important and impactful, in some cases even avoiding missiles, for example, that the security aspect is so critical. And part of that security also means that it needs to be manufactured and that it has complete oversight. I think the issue that we have in terms of satellites, for example, is some are relying on components that are coming from overseas. How are you dealing with some of that and making sure that the entire integrity of the system is controlled and it has an auspice under the auspice of the U.S. government and has the protection and the security to really serve the purpose for the DoD partners as well as the private enterprise?
Well, again, it's a huge issue that you're raising here, Scott, and I'm grateful for that, because first and foremost, it's important that the kind of entities that deal with U.S. defense and national intelligence, that they're U.S. owned and U.S. controlled entities. There's just a level of trust and understanding that goes with those kinds of entities. Without that, it causes those critical intelligence functions to question, hey, can I really trust? It's an issue of trust. It's building relationships and providing information and growing that relationship slowly over time. And it's nothing that, it's something that's earned. It's not given freely, that's for sure. But likewise, it's important that not only our piece parts, all of our vendor providers, those who are contributing to the PredaSAR platform, not only space as well as ground system, all of them are U.S. owned and controlled, and that we have a good understanding of our supplier line, and we do. And we feel good about all of our vendors and the capabilities and products that they are delivering, and to as much the extent possible as part of our parent company, Terran Orbital. Our goal is to continue to grow and be vertically integrated as much as possible. One final point that you brought up, I think, is really important to foot stomp, and that's something I think that former Secretary Mike Pompeo really hammered home when he was Secretary of State, is the threat, the cyber threat that we face, especially from China. And they are infiltrating and trying to attack every single network around our nation, as well as our partner nations, international partners. And so, fortunately, we're mindful of that, but good hygiene and practices, cyber protection practices are at the foremost of our thinking. And I just think that kind of message is just absolutely critical for those adversaries like China who continue to behave badly in the cyber domain. It reaffirms our intent to make sure that we protect our systems and capabilities to the best extent possible.
You've served our great nation for over 30 years in a military leadership capacity, and now you're actually serving again, but just under a private company label. But nonetheless, you're still doing the same thing in many ways. As you look forward, whether it's 5 or 10 years out, what are some of the things that worry or concern you? And how do you feel that we are potentially in a better situation than before to navigate around that, perhaps?
I think we're going to continue to see rapid growth as part of the new space economy and spacefaring nations. And so as I look at it from a space perspective, we're going to see even more participants and more. If you look particularly at low Earth orbit, I think debris mitigation and rules of engagement and norms of behavior really become a forefront issue. To make sure that, again, the environment is a known and trusted environment, that the behaviors of participants are responsible, and that they can be trusted, and that intentions are known and well known and respected. And when that doesn't occur, obviously it is concerning. And so there have been noted, in the press, there have been several noted instances of bad behavior. And if I were to worry about anything, it's that those actors who choose to disregard those kind of norms for their own advantage, those are the folks that I worry most about.
Agreed. Absolutely agree. And with that, I've been joined by General Teague, who is the CEO of PredaSAR Corporation. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you, Scott.
If you've enjoyed this episode, take a moment to rate our show on any podcast platform that you listen to. Scroll down to the bottom and push 5 stars. It's that easy. And as always, thanks for listening.